Constitutional Bodies Part 3. Before watching this video, you have to watch the Part 1 and Part 2 of this series. If not, it may be difficult to understand. In this video, we will discuss about Finance Commission, Special Officer for Linguistic Minorities, Attorney General of India, and Advocate General of the State. First, about Finance Commission. Finance Commission. Article 280 is dealing with Finance Commission, which came into existence in 1951. It is constituted by the President of India every 5th year. It is set up every 5th year to recommend on distribution of tax revenues. That means it was formed to define the financial relations between the center and the state, bifurcation of financial resources between center and the state. India has a federal structure where a lot of expenditure is done by state government. So, center have to share tax revenue with the states. So, the total tax received is shared between center and state. The bifurcation of financial resources between center and state. So, the Finance Commission recommend measures and methods on how the revenues or taxes need to be shared between the center and states. First, about its chairman and its members. Chairman and other members to be appointed by President. They submit this report to the President and President places this report before Parliament. Note that this report is not binding to the government. They are only advisory in nature. But its recommendation should not be rejected by the Government of India unless there are very strong reasons. Thus, Finance Commission is a constitutional body. Finance Commission Act 1951 says about the rules regarding qualification and disqualification of members of commission, their appointment, term, eligibility and powers, etc. So these are determined by Finance Commission Act 1951. And the qualification: chairman must be a person who had the experience of public affairs, and other members, they are or have been or qualified as judges of High Court and have knowledge of government finance or account and have had experience in administration and financial expertise and have special knowledge of economics. So other members are selected by this criteria. The members of the commission provide full-time or part-time service to the commission, and they are eligible for reappointment. The salaries and allowance of the members are determined by central government, and the commission has all the powers of the civil code. The functions of Finance Commission, that is the distribution of taxes between center and state. So there are two types of distribution, the vertical distribution and horizontal distribution. Vertical distribution means distribution of taxes between center and the state. That means what is the proportion that center and state should share the tax. The 14th Finance Commission has recommended the share of state in the center tax revenue as 42%. About 13th Finance Commission, it was 32%. Here, the single largest increase ever recommended by a Finance Commission, that is in the case of 14th Finance Commission. The share of the state, according to 13th Finance Commission, it was 32%, and the new 14th Finance Commission has recommended it as 42%. The horizontal distribution means the distribution among states. the percentage to each state, percentage to Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Kerala. And there are some factors or there are some parameters to determine this horizontal distribution. And the other function, determine the factors of grant in aid to state and make recommendation to the measures needed to augment the consolidated fund of the state to supplement the resources of Panchayat Raj institution on the basis of the recommendation made by the State Finance Commission. There are Panchayat Raj institution in states and they are received fund from State Consolidated Fund. And State Finance Commission make recommendation on this, but National Finance Commission also make report on this. 14th Finance Commission, Chairman Dr. Y.V. Reddy, former Governor, Reserve Bank of India. And the implementation period 1st April 2015 to 31st March 2021. And the shares of the state is determined as 42%. And in horizontal distribution, the Finance Commission used broad parameters. Horizontal distribution means distribution among states. It used the census 1971 and census 2011, forest cover in the states, income distance, area as its parameters. Once more, Article 280 is dealing with Finance Commission of India, which is came into existence in 1951. It is constituted by the President of India every 5th year. It was formed to define the financial relation between the center and the state. That means the distribution of net proceeds of taxes between center and the states. Dr. Y.V. Reddy is the chairman of 14th Finance Commission. Next, Special Officer for Linguistic Minorities. Special Officer for Linguistic Minorities. Article 350B is dealing with Special Officer for Linguistic Minorities. Most of the states have their own language which is spoken by majority of the people like Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam, etc. We call it as regional languages. But some people who do not speak these regional languages, maybe in tribal area, they are belong to linguistic minorities. So linguistic minority means a group of people whose mother tongue is different from majority of the states. They are determined by state-wise basis. So linguistic minority means a group of people whose mother tongue is different from majority of the state and they are determined by state-wise basis. They may speak a language which is included in the 8th schedule of the Constitution or a language that is not included in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. But that language is spoken by only a small percentage of people in that state. So there is a chance such linguistic minorities feel discriminated against by the current language policy of the Union and the states. During the primary stage of education or while submitting any application or complaints to any authorities. Originally the Constitution did not make any provision with respect to linguistic minorities. But the State Reorganization Commission made a recommendation and accordingly the 7th Constitutional Amendment Act created a new Article 350B. So there should be a special officer for linguistic minorities according to Article 350B and he is appointed by President. He investigates all matters relating to the constitutional safeguard of linguistic minorities. And the Constitution has not specified the qualification, tenure and procedure of removal of this special officer for linguistic minorities. In Article 350A says, states should make adequate facilities for instruction in mother tongue at the primary stage. and this special officer is designated as the Commissioner for Linguistic Minorities, and he is assisted by Deputy Commissioner and Assistant Commissioner. And at the central level, they are under Ministry of Minority Affairs. And they have regional offices at Allahabad in UP, Belgaum, Karnataka, Chennai, that is in Tamil Nadu, Kolkata, that is in West Bengal. Once more, Article 350B is dealing with Special Officer for Linguistic Minorities. 7th Constitutional Amendment as per State Reorganization Commission recommendation created the new article, Article 350B, which is related to Special Officer for Linguistic Minorities. Linguistic minority means a group of people whose mother tongue is different from majority of the states and they are determined by state-wise basis. The officer investigates all matters relating to the constitutional safeguard of linguistic minorities. Next, Attorney General of India. Article 76 is dealing with Attorney General of India, who is the highest law officer in the country. The Attorney General of India is the chief legal advisor of the Government of India and its primary lawyer in the Supreme Court. The Attorney General of India is appointed by President. The qualification: he must be a person qualified to be appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court. That means he must be a citizen of India and must have been a judge of some high court for 5 years, or an advocate of some high court for 10 years, or an eminent jurist in the opinion of President. The Constitution does not say anything about the procedure of removal of Attorney General of India. The President can remove him at any time. He holds office during the pleasure of President, and the remuneration is determined by President. Constitution does not contain anything about the procedure of removal of Attorney General of India. Conventionally, he resigns when government resigns or replaced with a new government. He is appointed by President on the advice of government. Next, Advocate General of the State. The post of Advocate General of the State is similar to that of Attorney General of India. An Advocate General is a legal advisor to a state government. Article 165 is dealing with Advocate General of the State, who is the highest law officer of the state. The qualifications: he must be a citizen of India, must have been qualified to be appointed as Judge of High Court, or must hold a judicial office for 10 years, or an advocate of High Court for 10 years. Conventionally, he resigns when government resigns or government is replaced with new government. He is appointed by governor on government advice. The Constitution does not contain the procedure of removal of Advocate General of the State. He holds office during the pleasure of the governor, and the remuneration is determined by governor.